What's up, John? How are you? Welcome back to MMA Junkie Radio.
Gentlemen, of the probably 36 times that we have chopped it up together, this is the only time I've been late. So I would like to apologize for being 2.5 minutes tardy today. My boss, Zach Candido, called. I got to take that call, but I told him MMA Junkie Radio is waiting. So it is great to see your shiny faces.
Oh man, thank you. Yeah, no, we knew you'd show up. That's just you. Your character speaks volumes for yourself, and that's why I always heap the praise, because you did it with hard work. You did it the hard way. So I knew you'd show up, John.
Yeah, I'm here. You knew I'd be here, but I apologize for being late a few minutes. But it's good to see you boys. I assume we're just going to talk about the LA kid, Daniel Rodriguez, right? That's all everybody in LA is talking about, right?
Oh, I guess we got to take that one. Yeah, we could. He is a stud. He is going to be ranked pretty soon. Like, he's really going to start to shoot up and get those contender fights. So shout out to D-Rod. But wow, you threw a curveball.
I know, of course. No, well, because you guys resonate LA with me in certain respects. And he is like LA, baby, with the tattoos and everything else. So, yeah, a little curveball. Hey, Goes is always throwing me curveball, right?
We are.
I know I got to be sober for MMA Junkie Radio because Goes is coming. So
we are, man. He got us. He's right. Like, we're actually putting on pullovers or we got hats in the background just to be jerks. And on this one, he got us. So good one on you, Jon Anik. All right, what's funny? I told Goes, we got to get him back on. The last time he was back on, we actually all three agreed that the Atlanta Hawks would go pretty far because they had a great free agency period, which was later in the year. So it hasn't been a whole year. It's been about 9 months, 8 months, something like that. And how about the fact that when they got to the semifinals, I was telling Goes, wow, that's something we actually talked about. The reason I'm bringing it up is because when the show was over, people were thinking that all three of us were crazy, and how did one of us not check the other one?
Well, because eventually these organizations do break through, and certainly we couldn't have foreseen them bringing in Nate McMillan. And even we were talking about Rajon Rondo, if I'm not mistaken, he wasn't even a part of the team at year's end. But obviously they have the superstar and they have the right head coach. And in a lot of these sports, those are big things, as any New Englander will tell you, head coach, quarterback, right? So, no, they're moving in the right direction. And for me, as I've told you guys, as I get older as a sports fan, even the Boston Celtics fan in me that grew up not liking Dominique Wilkins or Doc Rivers or the Atlanta Hawks because they were what amounted to an Eastern Conference rival. I'm softened now, and at 43 years of age, I was happy for the city of Atlanta to be able to sort of ride that wave.
John, you're an original through and through, but growing up, I'm sure you watched a lot of sports. Did you ever pick up anything from the great Johnny Most?
I didn't listen to Johnny a ton except for in highlight form because just circumstantially I wasn't in the car at night, whereas Gino Cappelletti and Gil Santos for the New England Patriots, leaving games early or whatever it was. Oftentimes I found myself listening to the Patriots guys. But Sean McDonough, I guess, was the guy that I plucked the most things from. But yeah, Johnny Most. If you don't know the name, Google Johnny Most. They don't come more legendary than that man. You can be sure. What a voice, what a tone, what a style. Total effing legend, man.
For sure. And it's funny because I think of the rivalry of the Celtics Lakers. Lakers fans really love Johnny Most. Maybe for the 2.5 hours that the game was on, maybe they didn't then, and vice versa, the Celtics fan loved Chick Hearn. But I'll tell you who we didn't love was Tom Heinsohn. That guy, man, he was Team Boston all the way. But anyway, all right, let's get into some MMA. I wanted to ask you how your voice carries a lot now, and it's interesting because when you look on Anik and Florian, the tweets, you encourage people to turn in their scores. You're vocal about how you're scoring fights, but you're so beloved. Everyone, I guess, do they ever give you a problem with you giving an opposing score or an opinion? Does that ever come back?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you look hard enough, on any given Sunday morning, I'm either the consummate promotional shill or the opposite of that. So Sometimes I like to enter the fray. Certainly when I'm calling fights, you will never see me, rarely I should say. I think one time in 10 years, I've actually tweeted during a fight. And I think it was recently after Diaz and Edwards. I think I tweeted something like, you wish you had a 209 tattoo right after Nate rallied against Leon. But when I'm not calling fights, as was the case this past Saturday night, certainly I don't mind scoring a fight and putting my score out there. And in the case of TJ Dillashaw versus Corey Sandhagen, this is a fight that I thought was worthwhile enough to go watch back before we taped our podcast this morning. So, yeah, I had it 48-47 Sandhagen. I know people out there certainly disagree. I think I am with the majority in this instance, but I just respect all opinions except those that deviate so far from the mean and the majority opinion that they're almost indefensible, as in a non-10-8 for Kyler Phillips in round one. I don't know how a paid judge or a high-level fan could defend a non-10-8 for Phillips in round one.
They call it a traveling circus sometimes because it's the same faces that travel around the world. Maybe not so much the last 18 months, but you know what I'm talking about. What about with not fighters, but judges and refs? Are there any types of huddles, and how are those, or do you tend to stay away from that?
Well, a lot of those guys are pretty close. And you talk about sort of the traveling circus. Like, I can find myself on a shuttle to an arena with these mixed martial arts judges like Sal D'Amato. And that is an interesting circumstance, right? Because not that I'm paid to criticize per se. I am not a color commentator. I'm a play-by-play announcer. But inevitably, it comes in my lane at times where I have to be critical of judges. So it's weird when you're transporting to the arenas with these guys. But I've had conversations about judging with Sal and with Chris Lee, and I'm motivated after this weekend to reach out to Sal in particular because I think he's the elite of the MMA judges, just to pick his brain a little bit. Judges and referees, as you guys know, are not encouraged to go on the record, but most of these guys are receptive to speaking to us privately. But yeah, in the past, when I've had issues, like when John McCarthy was a referee and not a commentator, and I've had issues with scoring or judging or officiating, I've just gone to John McCarthy because to me, he's like the number one resource in MMA. But after what I saw this weekend, I'm going to seek out Sal just to get some of my questions answered, and whatever I can relay to the masses, I will.
John, George and I had a little discussion earlier, and this happens every couple months. Open scoring gets thrown out there. George could maybe be convinced, but I think we're both sort of on the same page that I just feel like no matter what you do, there's always going to be some little gray area. And I use the example of, and I'm sure you've been through this, a fantasy football draft where you give out your selection and everybody in the room laughs. And right. The first thing you think is, oh man, I messed up. And you try and make up for it in the next round, right? I feel like that's what's going to happen. If you have two scores and you're going the opposite way and you hear the crowd booing, it's human nature. I feel like you're going to maybe try and make that up if you see a close round or something. It's difficult, man. There's a lot of things. Fighters can play for leads, that sort of thing. I don't know that that's going to solve the issue. How do you feel with open scoring?
So I am all for change, right? Like the Boston Celtics cleaning up house in their front office, open scoring in MMA, more judges. I mean, I don't want to be inefficient in my response here and talk about all the ways that I think we could affect change. But you're right, you're right insofar as open scoring effectively changes the sport of mixed martial arts, right? You have a fighter who has to change course for a third round because maybe they thought they were up 2-0 and instead it's 1-1. Then what happens if you have a fighter who's up 2-0 and then they sit on a lead, they get on a bicycle for 5 minutes and they get booed out of the arena for doing so. So it's not as though some of these solutions can't be poked through, but we have to be thinking about solutions because we keep finding ourselves in these situations where on any given Saturday night, 85% of the mixed martial arts fandom scores a fight one way, and 2 of the 3 scorecards in the world that matter have it another way. So I'm all for open scoring, even though I understand fully to your point that it's not the perfect solution.
John, you brought up something earlier when you were talking about watching the fights, and I've often wondered, what does that look like? What does Jon Anik, like when you're watching fights, is it everybody leave the room, I want to be alone? Do you have your fight food with you? Are you on a recliner? When you finally get to enjoy that moment that we all get to enjoy, what goes down in the Anik household?
I think this answer is going to be massively disappointing. I mean, man, did we enjoy that 7 p.m. Eastern start time. But oftentimes it'll be me watching on my phone, sometimes on mute while putting a kid to sleep, getting it in wherever I can get it in. Obviously, those later cards are a challenge for me because I'm essentially up at 5:30 a.m. Eastern. So a 10 p.m. Eastern main card goes. Likely is not happening until Monday morning, ideally without results in my head. And then I watch the fights, and then that dovetails right into to the Anik and Florian podcast. But I try to be a father as much as I can because I'm away 100 nights a year. So if that means that my scorecard doesn't matter as much as it should, so be it. I will say, though, for this fight card, I was able to watch these fights uninterrupted, and that's why I feel so strongly about some of the scorecards. But yeah, oftentimes I'm multitasking. Procreation is a real powerful thing.
I saw you chime in on Eric Nixick's Instagram post.
Yeah,
his wife and kids were on vacation in LA, it looked like, and he said, God, I wish I could be there, but I'm chasing wins. John, what do you chase in this sport?
Gosh, well, I'm chasing. That's a really good question. I mean, I'm chasing, greatness for my kids, right? I'm trying to provide for my kids. So I feel like a lot of men and women feel this crazy pressure to provide. And that's really what I'm doing. And I'm trying to do it with my head down. Certainly, I have a dream job. I have a job that I love. I have the job that I want. It's not as though I have this long list of dream jobs out there. Certainly, I would love the chance to call an NFL football game, but I have my dream job. I really enjoy the process still, as exhausting as it may be. But I don't know that I'm chasing any individual greatness or chasing any legacy for my children in terms of the sport as much as I am chasing a paycheck trying to provide for them. But I am a massive, rabid mixed martial arts fan, and it's not lost on me that maybe 60% of your listenership would love to trade places with me and have my job, even though maybe there should be days that they shouldn't want that. But I don't know. I'm just, in a lot of respects, I'm just trying to provide for these children. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure on us to do so. And that's why we go away a third of the year.
I love it. Great answer, man. And I loved everybody that chimed in on Eric's post because a lot of people could relate. We're all kind of do separate jobs, but I guess we all are in that same circus, going back to what I was saying.
Well, like if you guys won the lottery, would you still do MMA Junkie Radio? Because I've said to you guys, my dream job is to sit with you guys at the Mandalay Bay in a sports book and chop it up every day. My job, your job have different demands. Is my ego so big that if I had $100 million in the bank, that I would still try to be the lead play-by-play voice of the UFC and not give some other kid or a younger guy the opportunity, right? Do I think I'm the best man for the job? I'm not going to answer that, right? But I don't know if I win the lottery, if I would stick around, right? Because isn't the real work downstairs with my kids, right? I'm very torn on a lot of this stuff, but I think one interesting proposition to people is, hey, if you won the lottery, would you still want to go to work on Monday? And I think if the answer is yes, you got a damn good job.
Yeah, I will give him credit. He said that. I don't know that I've ever said that because I think I've said, well, after I come back from my 3-month vacation around the world, hitting the bucket list of sporting events, whatever's in season at that point, then sure, yeah, let's do it. Maybe not 5 days a week anymore. We'll downgrade it to 2. That's what I used to say back in the day. But all right, let's close with this. Give me your updated moment, and by that I mean kind of like Al Michaels. Do you believe in miracles? Do you have you pinned yours down to, or maybe give me a couple if you don't have one that hits over and over, or maybe one where fans have come up to you and said your call of this fight or what you said still feels kind of gives me goosebumps.
Well, I think the one that I hear the most from fans about is probably Francis Ngannou and Alistair Overeem, and maybe that's just a little bit of a recency thing because Francis went on to win the title and that got repurposed a lot. But I feel like for me, Daniel, and Joe, to a man, when we're asked about the broadcast booth and special moments or calls, it's Thug Rose Namajunas times 2. Like, I don't even remember what we said, but as she is doing what she did to Zhang Wei Li, I'm not thinking about what she did to Joanna Jędrzejczyk at Madison Square Garden. But in terms of the top 5 times I've been most surprised astonished, left speechless in that broadcast booth. Top 5 all time. 2 of those 5 are Thug Rose Namajunas. So I got to lead the dance with that, my man.
All right, sorry, and I do have one more, and that's a great answer because I was thinking of Thug Rose, but yes, the one with Zhang Weili was something else. All right, this has been a violent year, brother, and I remember hearing your call of McGregor, and you said, "Are you kidding me?" You know, I'm sure a lot of that was concern for McGregor. The fact that it was a fight that was playing out that could go in so many directions, you know, but if we look back at Jacare's arm and you know, Crute having the nerve damage, Weidman, what is it that goes through your head at that particular moment? What are you feeling for some of these guys that you get to know so well over the years and from interviewing them? How does that one feel versus what you just described, the speechless feeling of great moments?
So it's harder to watch Chris Mutino take that type of beating for me than it is to watch a guy like Impa Kasanganay get knocked out cold by Joaquin Buckley, right? Because I think most of us understand that it's the perpetual repeated damage that does more long-term damage than just getting knocked out cold. So those are the harder things for me to watch. Certainly when I hear Chris Weidman after the fact say that as he was writhing in pain, his brain immediately switched to that of a documentarian. And in that moment, he was trying to deal with the pain by thinking about documenting his recovery. Like, that is incredible to me. I was devastated for Conor McGregor, and there are other people out there that have said coldly that he got what he deserved. But in that moment, I'm absolutely devastated for Conor because I know he wanted to compete again in 3 months and then again 3 months later. So it's hard, man. It really is. And obviously there are personal relationships that make it even harder. But man, this year has been something else. I think too, George, about all the violent knockouts like Yuri Prochazka and Dan Ige. I mean, the competition for knockout of the year has never been stiffer, and we're not even at August 1st. So it's a violent game, my brothers. Nobody knows that better than you guys.
Jon, thank you as always for the time. It's always great to chop it up with you. We cover a lot, not just in this sport, but others. And we reciprocate that. A dream job of ours would be to just chop it up, talking about anything and everything in the Mandalay Bay. In fact, when I was looking, I had to look very hard to see if you've ever actually made it into the studio for
yes,
the interview. You know what I mean? Because I remember us talking outside the studio for like an hour one time. But yeah, it's been a while since we did that one. So when things open up, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, I think I visited you guys in your studio probably 4 or 5 times. I've been on once or twice, but we'll make it happen. But all the best to you guys, and don't lose my number.